What's up, everyone? Hope it's going well. Today we're going to be reviewing the Honda NC750X, the most practical motorcycle that money can buy. Today's review will be using Adobe Premiere Pro's new AI Audio Enhance feature, so I'm rather excited about that. I've seen very positive results from this, and it gives the audio a studio-like quality, so I hope you enjoy that. But before we get into the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and thank you for watching. So to start this review, unfortunately, this is going to be another motorcycle where I won't be able to record anything walking around the bike. It was one of the motorcycles we rented when we were in Hawaii, so I will be just using footage from that experience, and I don't have the bike in my possession anymore. That being said, I did have the bike for the entire day, and I did ride it around most of the island, and I took it through some rather technical roads. We took it on the Death Highway, which is a road where almost 50 people die every year. So some rather technical twisties. We took it up a mountain, rode it through the city. So I did just have a good overall experience. Had a little bit of highway riding, a little bit of curvy road riding, a little bit of city riding, had a little bit of everything. So I did get a good sense of what this bike actually is. So starting off with the things I didn't like, because there weren't many, so we'll get them out of the way. The number one thing I noticed again were that the brakes on this motorcycle were again horrible. When we were coming down the mountain, I'd be on the front brakes, I'd be on the back brakes, and I'd be downshifting, and it still always would feel like I'm just barely going to be able to slow down enough to be able to make the corner. So the brakes on this motorcycle, again, were not great. They did upgrade the rotor on this bike to a 320 millimeter rotor, but it is still just the single caliper setup on the one side. So I feel like it obviously could have been improved with a dual rotor setup. That being said, it did get the job done. You could stop, but it wasn't great. Another thing with the brakes is that while I did not personally test it out, this bike supposedly did come with ABS. So while the brakes might not be great, I'm glad that the ABS was there, and if I ever did demand more of the brakes, I'm glad that that was a safety feature that was built into the bike in case I ever did need it. The other thing that I think could have been improved on this bike, and I think is improved on other models of the bike, is the windshield. Again, we just rented this bike, so he had a smoked, smaller windshield, and I think normally they come with a taller stock windshield. But the windshield I did have on the bike could be a little bit taller, especially for touring or long mile days like this bike's kind of intending to do, or commutes to work or whatever. That being said, in my experience, it was a little short, but I think normally they do come taller. But other than that, I think that's about everything bad that I didn't like with this bike. One of the first good things I noticed on this motorcycle is how it actually sounded rather decent. It being a very practical motorcycle and all, a parallel twin laid flat derived from the Honda Fit, I thought this would be a rather boring and somewhat soulless and rather boring sounding motorcycle, but it actually sounds somewhat like a V-twin. It's got that low rumbly noise, and especially in like tunnels we went through, it actually sounded pretty decent, especially being a smaller displacement bike. While I recognize the 750 isn't small by any matter, in terms of sounding like a V-twin, normally something like 1800 cc's, this bike is, almost half that. It's less than half that size. So it did actually have a pretty good deep rumble to the exhaust note, and I rather liked that. As many of you might know, the more recent versions of this motorcycle, and even ones dating back to around 2016, I believe, have had the option to come with a dual clutch transmission, which is basically an automatic transmission. Is not the option I had on this bike. I had the 6-speed manual, which I was very grateful for. I like shifting through the gears. However, it would have been interesting to try the dual clutch, just to try it. Honda has it on a few other bikes now, such as the Goldwing and the Africa Twin. So it might have been nice to have been able to experience that, kind of see if I actually liked it at all. But I probably would buy this bike with the 6-speed manual if I had the choice. That being said, it is a good 6-speed gearbox. I never had any false neutrals or missed shifts. The gearbox was pretty good. I usually like a very solid clunk of an upshift or a downshift, a good responsive feedback. While this bike didn't really have that, there was just a smaller thud when you went to shift this bike, and it was just enough where I actually also really enjoyed it, as it was just kind of easier to push. So if you aren't as strong with your legs or in your feet, this actually was a very nice, solid transmission. In terms of the engine, obviously this isn't a super powerful motorcycle. It came in around 58 horsepower. And obviously when you're getting on the highway or anything, it's not going to throw you too far into the back of the seat, but it is a very practical and economical motorcycle, so I wouldn't expect anything. But that being said, it did have good power. You know, if you ever needed to roll on the throttle to pass someone, or you just wanted a little bit of speed through the corners, it did have some good speed, and the power, while it wasn't amazing, it actually did feel pretty good, and it felt like more than 58 horsepower. So I think that this motorcycle has actually a decent amount of power, especially considering the gas mileage it gets. And as long as we're talking about gas mileage, we can talk about how wonderful that is too. One of the things that makes this bike so practical is the fact that even if you're really giving it hard, you probably will get about 65 miles to the gallon. And if you're taking it easy, you can see upwards of 80 miles to the gallon, making this a very fuel efficient motorcycle, and again, a very practical machine. The gas tank is also something that makes this a very practical and easy to ride motorcycle. Where the gas tank normally is on a motorcycle in front of the rider is actually a storage compartment, which was extremely nice. You can fit a full face helmet in there. I put all kinds of stuff in there, Gatorade and chargers and batteries for the GoPro and everything. That is a very large compartment, and you can store a lot of things in there. But that means that the fuel is actually underneath the seat, bringing the center of gravity lower on this bike and making it very easy to drive. Also, the engine, due to the fact that it is a parallel twin and it was very horizontally laid out, where the cylinder heads were actually just slightly above the connecting rods. So that all put together makes the center of gravity on this bike really low and really easy to do low speed maneuvers, and a really easy motorcycle to drive for a first time rider. And the seat was also super comfortable, and the suspension worked well. So honestly, I think this is a really comfortable machine that you could use to commute to work, or you could tour on, or you could just drive around the city. It's just a good all-arounder, everyday bike that's good at almost everything. So yeah, overall, I was really impressed with this motorcycle. It's just a really good overall motorcycle. Besides the brakes, I would probably upgrade the brakes somehow if I were to buy this machine. But other than that, it's honestly a super practical machine. It gets really great gas mileage, and it has lots of storage space up in that gas tank area where you can put a helmet or all kinds of other things. Just a really kind of fun, easy to drive, easy to get into motorcycle that I really enjoyed. So with that, let's give this bike a Dane score. And here we have the 2016 Honda NC750X. Styling earns a 5. The tail section looks rather composed and sleek, but the front end looks rather chunky, and the turn signals look rather cheap, given that they're just part spin turn signals. Acceleration's a 6. This bike does 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds, so while it's not super fast, it's not the slowest either. Handling's an 8. This bike is very low to the ground and has a low center of gravity, making it easy to handle at high speeds and doing low speed maneuvers. Fun factor's a 5. This bike isn't super fun, but it isn't super boring either. It's just a little bit of everything, and it's kind of in the middle. Cool factor's a 3. This is just a cheap, practical Japanese motorcycle that's rather common. Features are a 3. While there is storage and a trip meter and a gas meter, there is nothing beyond that. There's no GPS or heated handlebars or even cruise control like I would have liked to seen. Comfort's a 5. The suspension on this bike is pretty good, and the seat's pretty good, but without cruise control or more wind protection, I can't give this bike a higher score. Quality's a 4. While it is a Honda and it does have reliability and I expect everything to last, it is also kind of cheap. The turn signals are like part spin. They seem rather cheap. There's a lot of plastic everywhere. It's not super high quality material. Practicality is a 10. This is probably one of the most practical and usable motorcycles money can buy. There's ample amounts of storage. It gets amazing gas mileage, and you could almost drive this bike anywhere. It's good in the city. It's good for touring, and it's just very usable. Value's a 7. While it is an extremely practical motorcycle, there aren't a whole lot of features on this bike, and I would have liked to seen things like cruise control or maybe a little bit higher end parts, less plastic. So values of 7, giving this bike a total score of 56. And that's all we have for today, so thank you for tuning in, and please comment, like, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.